Hello and welcome to KennyRoy.com. I'm Kenny Roy. This is the Ask Videomail for the week of July 28th, 2014. Welcome to the site to you new members, and welcome back to you old members. The Ask Videomail is your chance to get your question in character animation or performance answered in a video just like this one, but I need your question if I'm going to answer it, so please send them to Webmaster. Go with it. Keep on going. At KennyRoy.com, I go through all the questions and I answer the ones that I think will help the most people. There's no such thing as a stupid question in the world, and it is the best way to get the most out of the site. You new members, don't forget to take advantage of that. I also give you 2 free days. Every single question you send into the Ask Videomail web email address, web email. You know, I'm just making it all up today. It is just freewheeling, willy-nilly. We're not going to stop. We're just going to keep going. I am so excited. I'm excited and I'm a little bit strung out. I'm building a deck at home in the middle of collabs. Got 2 projects that we're wrapping up, one for EA, one for a private client. Private. I can't say who. But Georgina, this has been a pretty tough week, but I'm very excited to bring you this Ask Videomail question because I like to talk about these kinds of things. It reminds me of the good old days. So without further ado, check out the question this week. Yes, I do. Oh boy, you don't have to go very far. You can't throw a stone in LA without hitting somebody who has a crazy story about a note that they've received some sort of feedback from a director or a supervisor or their lead animator or whatever. Man, I could go on forever, but I wanted to tell you guys about 3 notes that sort of fall into 3 very different categories that kind of give you, or that will illustrate the kinds of not frustrations. I mean, this is all these are good problems to have, but sort of the many tasks of an animator and how sometimes it can be very difficult to educate the masses on what it is we're doing and how we're doing it. The first note, it falls under the category of sort of odd in its importance. We were working on Garfield, and we kept on getting our shots sent back to us after we had basically shown them for final animation. So everything was in temp, but then we turned in for final, and nothing was getting approved. Everything was getting sent back. Eventually, there was sort of like this little powwow among the animation team, and there was a supervisor that was on the studio side, so working for Fox, that was in charge of all the animation. And then there was, on the R&H side, we also had our own animation director. Well, apparently, there was a little bit of a conflict between those 2 people. And what ended up happening was there was a lot of, basically, shots were being sent back with the smallest little note on it that would end up affecting all of us. So this is sort of the weird in its importance category. I guess you could call it funny. What happened was all of us had to put the tail in our shots for some reason. So if Garfield was like facing forward, and even if like nothing was really going on with his tail, what can I use to make a tail? I don't really have anything that I can. I can use this. The very thing that I'm standing on. So even if you were, you had Garfield in a shot where not much was going on, and he was just like looking, you had to have a little bit of tail, just like a little bit of that going on behind there. And what the note ended up, I'm not sure if this was exactly what was said, but the note as it came down and fell on our ears was that the studio is paying for the tail, so they want to see the tail. So that was very, very, very weird. I can sort of understand it from an artistic perspective, that Garfield, I think in every single frame of Garfield, let me just look this up. I don't think there is a drawing that exists of Garfield that doesn't show the tail. Well, here's one where he's lying down. Yeah, but for the most part, it's not Garfield until he has the tail there. So yeah, I'm really, it's really tough to find a drawing. There's a few here where he's lying on it, but yeah, it looks like pretty much every single drawing of Garfield has a tail. So I can almost I can see it for that perspective, that they want to stay on model, and they want it to be the character, that the real character that he is and whatever. But what ended up coming down to us was, we're paying for the tail, so we want to see the tail in every single shot. So that was a little bit weird, don't you think? It's kind of a little bit of a weird note. Okay, next category is the Facepalm category. I got this note every single time from my client when we were doing Destination Truth, which is a channel on Sci-Fi channel. It's a show on Sci-Fi Channel. Maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago. It was one of our first projects at Arconics. Okay, and the note was, we want him to take. Whenever it was a character, they were obsessed with speed. Okay. So we want him, or they were obsessed with how big the steps were. Okay? We want the character, I'm going to say him. We want him to take bigger steps, but we want him to be on screen for the same amount of time. And you can't slow him down. Just think about that one for a second. Bigger steps, on screen for the same amount of time, but you can't slow him down. Impossible. Impossible. Just not physically able to do that. So what we ended up doing was we would change our cameras so that they were longer lensed, and it would be completely inaccurate to because this was CG creatures, low budget CG creatures. If any of you are going back on YouTube right now and looking up Destination Truth, I'll tell you the budget if you're interested. All right, so give us a break. All right, we did it on a shoestring. Anyway, CG creatures on live action plates. And so we would get our plates, and we would track them. And so this webcam, I'm not sure, it's pretty wide angle, so it's maybe a 25 or a 30 millimeter lens, this webcam. Okay, but so we would back the camera out and zoom in, and what that does is that reduces the amount of perspective. Basically, it shoots it longer. So what would end up happening was our characters, we discovered that the client basically couldn't pick out when the camera wasn't matched to the plate, and the characters' feet were sliding a little bit. So we would turn the characters a little bit more towards camera, do a longer lens, and then like run them as fast, bigger steps, and they'd be on screen for the same amount of time. So we figured out how to do the impossible with that one. Okay, final category is the mind exploding, oh my god, this is way bigger than me moment. Okay, and I've told this story before, I think, in one of the past lectures, but it's a story I really like telling because it was a big moment. It was a mind-blowing moment for me. And it was on King Kong. I had just finished my first shot. It wasn't finaled yet, of course, but the animation director was taking a look at I guess it was temp animation. And I just finished it. I normally, my workflow takes it pretty darn close to polish in between, right after blocking. So I normally zoom up to that point, and there's only like little things to do. So it was like almost like final quality animation. Anyway, I'm prefacing this story with that just so you can kind of put yourself in the mood of like where I was in terms of like the where this shot was finished or not. So I go into his office, I sit down, he brings up the shot on his computer, and he plays it, and he says, "Wow, that's really good. I love how Kong does that awesome stretch pose." And I was like, "Yes." In my head, I was like, "You nailed it, man! What a great start to a show, man! You get brought into the animation director's office. He says that he loves it. He says like he loves this like super stretch pose and whatever, but he wasn't finished his sentence. And he says, "But I'm saving that." And I was like, because right at that moment, I realized that I was working on a feature film. And everything was bigger than me. And everything had to go together and fit together and work together. And that the job of an animation director is to make sure that all the movement is coherent and cohesive and fits. And that like you can't have one animator using this like super stretched crazy pose in one shot like a third of the way through the film and then expect it to be as exciting later on in the film in the scene that actually kind of calls for that. All right, and I had like all the times I had been told as a young animator to like make every single shot like the biggest and the best and the whatever you can do. All that was sort of like running back through my head, and I thought to myself like, well, was that like not good advice, or did I do it wrong, or whatever? But it just turned out that there is so much more to think about and keep an eye on and be sort of aware of than just like your one little tiny shot. Because in Kong, there's something like 2,800 shots in that film, right? 1 out of 2,800 shots. I mean, what are you expecting? And I felt like stupid and so just like amateur that I had done that, and I didn't express any of this, but in that when I got that note from that animation director, I kind of felt like, all right, you know what, I kind of like got to a point with my animation that I was, I thought to myself like I'm a good animator now, but now that is kind of like the moment. I'm not sure if any of you remember this. People in the United States, I'm not sure if we have different shoe sizes than everyone else, but you have the kid sizes and then you have the adult sizes. And I remember when I went up to 13 in kids, I think that's something like, like a 3 or a 4 or whatever in adults. Anyway, so I remember that moment when I went from 13 to like 3, and I was like, oh man, I'm starting all over, but it's okay because even though like it's a smaller number, it means a bigger shoe. And that's the exact feeling that I got in that moment. I was like, all right, I worked my way up to get into Weta and work on this film that a lot of other people, probably who were better than me didn't get a chance to work on. So I'm about this good with my animation, but being that good with your animation is like being about this good, in the adult sizes, is about this good in terms of having a bigger picture awareness, knowing how to point out things that are affecting storytelling and affecting pace and tempo in your film, knowing how the screen works and the theater works and all these things. Like, I got another note. I told you I was going to give you 3. I'll give you one more, which was same sequence, different shot. I had this motion go like this, and you see how you can watch my hand go across? Well, in a movie theater, this point right here is about 40 feet away from this point right here. All right? So if I go like this, the audience just had to whip their heads, basically, half the audience, about like halfway through the theater forward, had to turn their heads to watch that. And we actually got notes to slow things down a ton of times. So again, you're this good of an animator, but you're only right here in terms of knowing everything else you need to know in terms of how animation works and goes into a movie. So that was another great note. So I've got a million more. Most of them are the second kind, the client kind, the Facepalm kind. In fact, I've got about 10 emails in my inbox right now that I could go through and tell you about, but I won't. Anyway, you will get your own stories. You will get your own, challenging or stupid or funny notes. But really, it's what you do with them that kind of matters. Through dealing with the Fox note, just had to sort of laugh about it and learn to have a good attitude and not be so self-righteous or whatever that you're not going to go back into every single one of your shots and add a little bit of tail animation if it's not there already. Whatever, man, my animation's perfect. Who has that attitude, and how do they ever expect to work in this industry? They probably don't, so you can't be that person. With the second kind, with the impossible one, it kind of taught me to think about very, very weird and out of the box ways to give people what they want. And there's really not any note that I can be told these days that I'm like, oh, that's never going to work. It just rolls off me now. I'll make it work. I don't care if you're asking for up and down at the same time. Make them a little bit higher and a little bit lower. I'll figure it out. That's how I feel now. And then the third one, obviously, those inspiring sort of mind-expanding notes. You don't have to do anything with those. They'll do what they need to you. So, but at any rate, yeah, take your notes in stride and learn from them and enjoy them, because this is a great job to have. These are all good problems to have. All right, we're not we're not underground mining coal and having our mine shaft collapse on us or something like that. Those are big problems on the job. These are not big problems what we have. All right, so learn to enjoy it. That was a great question. Thanks for sending that one in. Please send more. There's the address to send them to. Looking forward to reading some questions from you new guys, okay? Send them in. Have some fun, okay? This is fun. Let's all work together. Thanks a lot. I'm Kenny Roy. Good luck with your animation. As always, rock on.